folks. Welcome to the new episode of Level-Headed Marketing. Myself, Doc Sheldon, Gabriela Sanino, and we have a guest today that was around somewhere shortly after the parting of the Red Sea, I believe. Ammon Johns. Ammon Johns may be more known to a lot of us as the BlackKnight. He's been around for years as an icon in the industry. Certainly, if you frequented some of the old forums and even some of the current forums, like Create a Site, for instance, he's very active over there. He's been a passion of his has been correcting misinformation and sharing new information with people on the net for a few decades now. So what we've got on the board today is essentially an explanation of where the internet has gotten to over the years via commercialization. And some of it was surprising to me. I think it may be surprising to some of our viewers as well. Google had played a part, but it's not the same part that a lot of us suspect. So how did the internet get commercialized from past to present? And that will lead into our next part of this series next week. We're going to be joined by Bill Slosky. We'll be exploring the present to future aspects of it. So, Ammon, welcome to Level-Headed Marketing.
Thank you.
Share your wisdom.
Okay, I'll just unload the lot now. The interesting thing about what brought me into the internet commercially was that I loved what it was about. I loved the freedom of it. And I kept seeing these messages, the internet should be free. But unlike most people, I thought, right, show me 2 inches of fibre optic cable that was laid for free. All these millions of miles of fibre optic cable have been a huge investment. Can't put a lot of money in as well. And it occurred to me, if they didn't start making their money back in a way that was good for us, they'd start making their money back in a way that wasn't so good for us. And that led me into promoting e-commerce and making it work. Of course, there were a lot of other people with similar mindsets that I came across over the years. Between us, I think we've done a pretty good job in steering e-commerce into something that is acceptable to us all and works for everybody.
Just for the sake of clarity, can you give us a timeline? What years are we talking about?
There I'm talking about the early half of the 90s. Right. I'd got into the internet through having a shift job. I finished work sometimes at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I think America has a slightly better situation than us. But back then was appalling in the early mornings. We had a choice between prisoner cell block H and turning it off. And sometimes you were so desperate that prisoner cell block H won.
Right.
There was some series called The Highwayman about some post-apocalyptic policeman in a truck that turned into a helicopter. This is how bad nighttime TV was. The internet was my salvation. Chat rooms let me talk to people all over the world, so I could find somebody who was up. Tinkering about with the web when that came along, building websites for myself, later for friends, and then starting to be asked to do it for other people commercially. It all led on, one piece after another. I still joyously remember IRC chat rooms, Internet Relay Chat. And I think one thing a lot of companies forget when they come on is the internet was social media long before there was a web. You know, email was the first thing. Chat rooms were right behind it. Bulletin boards. All of these things were inherently social. It was websites and brochures that there weren't.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something, again, Doc and I were discussing. Back in the day when we were on the internet, it was chat rooms, and we were social, but there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't Yelp, there wasn't, all these things, but you did have the forums, and that was the trusted circles, if you will. So very important behavior, if you will. We're doing the same thing. We're just compartmentalizing it now and giving it titles and applications and tools and SEO, which is how you also started. What were some of the verticals or the niche markets, would you say, that was the most popular that embraced e-commerce back in the day?
Ad Marina was one of the very first. People are people. And you always saw it in the chat rooms anyway. There was always an adult chat room. What was interesting, I was a server administrator on an IRC chat for a while. The lesbian room was hilarious because we could see who was actually in there. And frequently there were 60 people engaging in lesbian chat and there wasn't one woman in the room. We knew their logins.
That's funny.
It's true. I was in those rooms.
But even then, people were dropping URLs to visit servers, FTP servers, if nothing else.
Exactly.
In IRC, so to what the potential of the internet was. Let's face it, the adult industry will always find a way. It explores everything, and I'm not just talking about some of the actresses. The way that they always try everything out. There's an old friend of mine. I'll only use his internet nickname, Bob X. He worked for one of the large pornographic companies of the day that ran the hit tracking. Back then every single site had a banner that tracked hits to the page. Sure. Well, he was running the company behind that, and one day he'd put in for some equipment upgrade that they needed, and the boss there said, "You've got to be kidding, this is more than Microsoft has." He said, "There's a reason for that." He said, "What's that?" So he changed the code, so instead of pinging them, it pinged MSN. That's how big the adult industry was even then. Microsoft, straight down, 3 seconds.
Wow.
They were the first that introduced me to dynamic optimization. Everything was done in such bulk. And of course, the sites were running 24 hours a day across every country in the world. So they had their banners. And at any one given time, they'd have 10 banners being shown on websites. 7 of those were the most successful from the last hour. 3 of them were on test. Every 30 minutes, they had enough data to switch the banners to take the best of the 3 into the new one, drop 3 of the old, etc., etc. It was dynamic optimization as it was going along.
Wow.
And what it meant was, as each global region tuned in or dropped out, the natural demographic of the pictures changed to match them. But user selected, and every 30 minutes they had enough 1,000 click-throughs to know which were the banners that were going to produce the best traffic. That was 95, 96.
Right.
So when you brought SEO to those companies, you similarly had to have something that was robust, that was thoughtful, and most of all, that worked and worked fast. And for that reason, the adult industry was years ahead in terms of everything server-side. Everything that they were doing in terms of automation was just, it had to be that good. It had to be that solid to deal with the sheer volume that they were getting.
Right, right. So search, I mean, there was probably other elements involved, but it was still, you still had to attack search and algorithms and banner clicks and the beginnings of PPC, if you will.
I think I say the real tipping point came for search. Before that, it was seen as one of the areas that we were bringing in traffic from. But to be honest, you probably got more from banners if they were done well than you got from search engines.
True, true. I remember when banners were really, really popular, because we were doing them. And so those were the big money makers. Different sizes, some GIFs, some not. And back then you were using more GIFs than you are now. Now they're basically memes and jokes. But That's how you dealt with that niche back then. So
Yeah.
how would you say it's? I mean, it's changed a lot, I'm sure, but in our conversation prior to being on air, you had mentioned that you got out of the industry in 2000. Do you want to just kind of briefly go over that and just explain what happened?
Yeah, I got out of the adult industry. It became all about the numbers. It was all what we call these days black hat.
Mm.
Everything was about automation. Everything was about sheer volume and numbers, and there was no thought to the marketing behind it. Literally, the last client was one that said, right, what we have is we have 3,000 front ends for one database, and we want you to optimize them all so that we can sell them. And my advice to this client had been on the business side as well as the SEO side. How do you get those links coming? Well, you have some original content.
Right.
At that time, there were 5 databases supplying pretty much all the porn in the world. 3 of them were providing 95% of websites. And I said that he needed to start building up his own. We'd had a few successes online with the first people setting up webcams that were watching them. Was it Jen at Home? Somebody like that in '96, I think, was one of the big successful sites.
Right.
And she charged for private shows. You pay by credit card for access to the cam, basically.
Right.
Sometimes it was very dull. I mean, somebody had done a house all wired up to the internet that was 6 college girls, supposedly. And they were charging people a monthly fee to tune into that feed. If you want to watch teenage girls eating lunch, I suppose it was a great price.
Right.
But it just showed that original content, even back then, was a major draw for marketing. If you don't have something different, you're just playing the same game as everyone else, and all you're left with is trying to play with tricks to get to number 1. And the thing is, any trick somebody else can copy.
Which brings us to the whole line that I hate to say content is king, but engaging people, human behavior, because whether it's from the early 90s or mid 90s to today, it's still about engagement. It's about relevance, and how you market to different verticals, different niche. So welcome back, Doc, by the way. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My phone rang, and it was Robert trying to get in. He's having some difficulty.
Oh, excellent.
And we have Joshua. Hello, Joshua. Can you hear us? Did you invite Joshua, Doc? Do we know Joshua?
But welcome regardless.
Joshua, hello and welcome. No, Joshua's leaving. Hopefully I can edit these out or just leave them in. Oh no, there he is. He's back. Anyway, so Doc, we were going through a little bit more history when you is Robert coming on, by the way?
He's trying to find his way in now. I sent him new invites again. He didn't get the email invite. I just sent him new invites on both Google and email, so hopefully he'll join us shortly.
Right. So some of your history also, Ammon, is you were a web designer. How has that changed? Because I mean, I know visually sites back then were just eyesores. But there were some that were okay. Things have changed a lot. I mean, all the way to now where everybody's using WordPress practically. So,
yeah.
How has it changed? And I'm sure it's been for the positive, but in your experience.
Well, there were some. So, you had to use table layouts. You'd have sliced images that were put into the tables to get shapes that you wanted. You didn't have cascading style sheets. So it was quite difficult. In fact, I'd actually put it the other way around. I would say that a lot of the good design of today has been driven by SEO.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did have Flash websites early on.